As you would pass judgment on her, I have come to pass judgment on you all. Do you wish to feel the teachings born of the Mandalorian wars, of all tragedies that scream across the galaxy? Let me show you, you who have forever seen the galaxy through the Force. See it through the eyes of the exile.
We all know what happens here. The Jedi Masters die. But were they killed? You see, I've had this inkling for a while now. When I read into some of Kreia's words, it leads me to believe that perhaps Kreia wasn't exactly trying to kill the Jedi Masters, but simply knew that the most likely outcome would be death.
If she served in the war, well, Jedi are supposed to be tough, capable.
Yes, and what are they without the Force? Take the greatest Jedi Knight, strip away the Force, and what remains? They rely on it, depend on it more than they know. Watch as one tries to hold a blaster, as they try to hold a lightsaber, and you will see nothing more than a woman, or a man, a child.
But to lose so much, I guess I didn't realize how much they relied on it.
Do not be surprised. In many ways, even you are more capable than a Jedi. You could survive where they could not simply because you do not hear the Force as they do.
A question that Kreia posed to her students back when she was a Jedi was, is a Jedi still a Jedi without Force powers? If you ask me, the answer is yes. The Jedi is a religious organization with beliefs and rules about how to worship and use the Force. The Jedi don't seem to see it that way, however, and tend to limit their official members to Force-using warrior monks who also train in lightsaber combat. Technically, anyone can hold these beliefs and train in becoming proficient with weapons. A Jedi can be Force-sensitive, but for whatever reason, never use the Force. He would still be a Jedi. But remember what I said, the Jedi don't seem to see it that way. Certain things Kreia says made me question what exactly she's doing to the Jedi Masters. Things like this.
It is a means of severing connections between life, the Force, and feeding upon the death it causes.
Feeds on the death that it causes. In general, that does seem to be the most common outcome. But we all know that it isn't universal. So far we know of several methods of how someone can lose their connection to the Force. Nihilus's method is a rather violent one, and its entire intention is to cause death. The Jedi method? Not violent. The Sith method? Very violent. The exile at Malachor 5? Brought on by violence, but different. Nobody took the Force from her. She renounced it, rejected it, was forced to make a choice between life or the Force. So when Kreia says this,
let me show you, you who have forever seen the galaxy through the Force. See it through the eyes of the exile.
These three individuals, who have always perceived existence through the Force, now see it in the way that the exile does, through her own senses, without it being filtered through the Force. I think Kreia was giving the Jedi Masters a choice between life and the Force. This attack, if you really want to call it that, wasn't meant to drain life, but to drain the Force. It was used to replicate the conditions that the exile was faced with on Malachor 5. The Jedi saw what the exile represented, life without the Force, more than possible. So Kreia placed them in a situation where they could either accept this truth and renounce the Force themselves, or die holding on to it. The confrontation between the Council and the exile was to see if the Jedi had learned anything.
And now, perhaps, they shall see what you have become.
But I think that even if they did, Kreia was determined to go through with this and really put them to the test. Once the likeliest answer was swung towards no, they learned nothing and was going to punish the exile for bringing them this truth, she came in guns blazing.
Enough! Step away from her.
What?
Step away! She has brought truth, and you condemn it. The arrogance. You will not harm her. You will not harm her ever again.
I grew up in a place that is about 85% Roman Catholic. This scene is very reminiscent of a curious child growing up in such an environment who was always asking questions. And I remember adults getting very upset, not due to the question itself, but due to the fact that you're asking questions at all. The Jedi weren't presented with a question. It was worse. They were presented with an answer. Don't imagine a priest being given irrefutable proof that God doesn't exist. Imagine the Pope, who has all of his power because of this religion, and he's handed this proof. Would he accept it and give up his power? Or does absolute power corrupt absolutely, and he buries it? So instead, Kreia, I was gonna say Kreia put a gun to their heads, but that's not entirely accurate. She instead placed them in a contraption, like the ones you see in those Saw movies. Well, Saw 1 and 2 at least. Anyway, she put them in a contraption and said, "The choice is yours. Live without power or kill yourself holding on to it." They chose power, because what is a Jedi without the Force? In their minds, the Jedi weren't respected because of their wisdom, because they never give up, because they always try to do what's right, because they have integrity. No, it was about them winning the lottery of life and being born with an innate ability to use the Force. What is a politician without an office? Someone who has an ideology and continues to argue for and fight for what they believe in and what they believe is right for their country any way that they can? Or someone who isn't elected to office and thus gives up on themselves and their party? Or worse, lashes out when they're proven wrong about something and can't win the argument. I once knew someone who couldn't stand to be wrong, and because of that, I couldn't stand them. There is no shame in being wrong, but there is wisdom in admitting when you're wrong and learning from it. It's better to be wrong now and be right later. You might think that I'm wrong about this entire video, and I very well might be. If so, then tell me, convince me. Do that and I'll probably remake this entire video. Let's see what this can evolve into.